I stood frozen in that sterile conference room as my husband Brad, CEO of our tech startup, raised my revolutionary smart home prototype above his head and hurled it against the mahogany table. The device I had spent 8 months perfecting exploded into fragments of metal and circuit boards. Brad's voice boomed across the room as he declared it garbage, announcing they would start over with a real team. Our biggest potential client, Sarah Chen from Global Tech Industries, watched in stunned silence. Then an unexpected guest observer rose from her corner chair and spoke words that would change everything. Sarah slowly turned to face me with newfound interest burning in her eyes, asking for my business card. 6 months earlier, I had approached Brad with trembling hands and a heart full of dreams. My prototype sat nestled in a custom foam case, its sleek silver surface catching the afternoon light streaming through his office windows. I was Alicia Morrison, a 32-year-old engineer who had sacrificed a 6-figure position at Apple to join my husband's startup, TechFlow Solutions, 3 years prior. The device represented countless nights hunched over my workbench in our garage, soldering connections and debugging code, while Brad slept peacefully upstairs. My smart home automation system incorporated advanced artificial intelligence learning algorithms that could adapt to user behavior patterns within hours of installation. The energy efficiency features alone could reduce household consumption by 40%. Brad leaned back in his leather executive chair, his perfectly styled brown hair catching the light as he examined my creation. His blue eyes sparkled with what I mistook for genuine enthusiasm. He had always possessed a magnetic charisma that could convince investors to write checks within minutes of meeting him. That same charm had swept me off my feet during our college years at Stanford. "This is incredible work, honey," he said, turning the device over in his manicured hands. "I think we should allocate company resources to develop this further. Jenny and Carlos could assist with the technical implementation." My heart soared as I watched him carefully place the prototype back in its protective case. Jenny Williams, our 26-year-old junior engineer, had been eager to work on innovative projects since joining our team 8 months ago. Carlos Rodriguez, our brilliant software developer, possessed an intuitive understanding of machine learning that complemented my hardware expertise perfectly. Over the following weeks, Brad attended every progress meeting with apparent interest. He would nod thoughtfully as I explained the intricate details of sensor integration and wireless communication protocols. Diana Matthews, our sharp-tongued marketing director, began developing preliminary promotional materials based on my technical specifications. The project consumed my every waking moment. I arrived at the office before sunrise and stayed long after the cleaning crew finished their rounds. My fingers grew calloused from handling tiny components, and my eyes burned from staring at computer screens displaying endless lines of code. But the excitement of creation drove me forward through every obstacle. Jenny proved to be an invaluable collaborator, her fresh perspective challenging assumptions I had carried for years. Carlos contributed elegant software solutions that elevated my hardware design beyond anything I had imagined possible. Even Diana seemed genuinely excited about the commercial potential, frequently stopping by my workspace to observe demonstrations of new features. Brad continued offering encouragement and resources, assigning additional team members to support various aspects of development. He spoke passionately about revolutionizing the smart home industry and positioning TechFlow Solutions as a leader in innovative automation technology. But subtle changes began creeping into our interactions. During team meetings, Brad started referring to our project and our innovation rather than acknowledging my individual contributions. When investors visited the office, he would casually mention the revolutionary technology we're developing without specifically crediting my role as the primary inventor. Initially, I dismissed these linguistic shifts as innocent oversights. After all, we were married, and I assumed he naturally thought of our successes as shared achievements. The company belonged to both of us in many ways, given my significant sacrifices to help build it from the ground up. However, during one particularly important board meeting, Brad presented my work to potential investors as his own brainchild. He stumbled slightly through the technical explanations but recovered with his characteristic confidence and humor. The investors seemed impressed by his vision for the future of home automation, and several expressed interest in providing additional funding. That evening, I confronted him privately in our kitchen while he prepared his usual post-work martini. The granite countertops reflected the overhead lights, creating an oddly clinical atmosphere for such an emotional conversation. "Brad, I noticed you didn't mention my name during today's presentation," I said carefully, trying to keep my voice steady and non-accusatory. He paused while measuring gin, not meeting my eyes. "What's mine is yours and vice versa, right, honey? We're a team. Besides, investors respond better to clear leadership and unified vision. Too many names just confuse the narrative." His words felt like ice water flowing through my veins. I realized my husband had been systematically positioning himself as the creative force behind my innovation while I labored in relative obscurity. The betrayal cut deeper than any professional slight because it came wrapped in the language of marital partnership. I decided that the upcoming presentation to global tech industries would be my opportunity to prove my worth and reclaim credit for my creation. The device was nearly perfect, incorporating features that would revolutionize how people interacted with their living spaces. I would demonstrate not just technical competence, but visionary leadership that could elevate our company to unprecedented heights. The following weeks blurred together in a haze of perfectionist obsession and growing marital tension. I refined every aspect of my prototype, adding sophisticated features that pushed the boundaries of current technology. The device could now learn individual family members' preferences, automatically adjusting lighting, temperature, and entertainment systems based on subtle behavioral cues. During late-night coding sessions, I discovered Brad had been conducting secret meetings with our board of directors. Through Jenny's careful observations and Carlos' strategic eavesdropping, I learned these discussions centered on his revolutionary invention and its potential to attract major corporate partnerships. "Alicia, I think you should know something," Jenny whispered during one of our collaboration sessions. Her usually bright demeanor carried an undertone of worry that made my stomach clench. I overheard Brad telling the board that he conceived the entire smart home system during a weekend retreat last year. He described it as his response to inefficiencies he observed in traditional automation approaches. Carlos nodded grimly from his workstation across the room. "Has been showing your technical documentation to Rick Daniels at Technova. I saw them meeting at that coffee shop downtown, and Brad had your folder with all the proprietary algorithms clearly visible on the table." My blood ran cold. Rick Daniels was Brad's former business partner, now running a competing startup that specialized in acquiring and commercializing other companies' innovations through questionable means. The fact that Brad would share my confidential work with a direct competitor felt like the ultimate betrayal of both professional and personal trust. That evening, I confronted Brad about his meetings with Rick. We stood in our home office, surrounded by the awards and photographs documenting our shared journey in the tech industry. His response shattered any remaining illusions about his integrity. "I was just getting feedback from someone with experience in the market," he said defensively, his voice rising to the aggressive tone he typically reserved for difficult negotiations. "You're being paranoid and unsupportive of my leadership. Rick understands the business implications better than you do. Sometimes technical people get too attached to details and lose sight of commercial viability." His words stung like physical blows. He was positioning me as an overly emotional engineer who lacked business acumen, despite my MBA from Wharton and years of successful project management experience. The man I had married was systematically undermining my professional credibility while stealing credit for my intellectual achievements. Diana began distancing herself from me during this period, aligning more closely with Brad's narrative about visionary leadership and market positioning. She would nod sympathetically when Brad criticized my emotional attachment to technical specifications, suggesting that successful commercialization required practical compromises. "Alessia, you need to trust Brad's business instincts," she said during one particularly frustrating marketing meeting. "He has the relationships and industry knowledge necessary to turn your technical work into genuine commercial success." Sometimes the best engineers make poor business leaders because they're too focused on perfection rather than profitability. Her words felt like salt in an open wound. Diana was essentially arguing that my role should be limited to technical implementation while Brad handled all strategic decision-making and external representation. The collaborative partnership I had envisioned was becoming a hierarchical relationship where my contributions were valued only as long as they remained invisible. Jenny and Carlos, however, began documenting their actual contributions to various projects, sensing the toxic dynamics emerging within our team. They quietly approached me with detailed records of my innovations, their supporting work, and Brad's actual level of involvement in technical development. "We want you to know that we understand exactly who created what," Carlos said during a private conversation in the parking garage. "If anyone ever questions your contributions, we have comprehensive documentation to support the truth." The night before the Global Tech presentation, Brad insisted on reviewing all my materials under the guise of ensuring consistency with company messaging. He spent hours rewriting my technical explanations, claiming they were too complex for clients to understand and needed simplification for broader commercial appeal. I watched helplessly as he stripped away the sophisticated details that demonstrated the true innovation behind my work. His revised version made the technology sound like a minor improvement on existing systems rather than the revolutionary breakthrough it actually represented. "Trust me, honey," he said, while making final edits to my presentation slides. "I know how to talk to these people. Your job is to make the technology work, and my job is to make it sell. We each have our strengths, and success requires playing to those strengths rather than trying to do everything ourselves." I realized he was systematically reducing my role to that of a technical assistant while positioning himself as the creative visionary. The presentation that should have been my moment of professional triumph was becoming another opportunity for him to claim credit for my achievements. As I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling while Brad slept peacefully beside me, I understood that my marriage and my career were both built on fundamentally dishonest foundations. The man I loved was actively sabotaging my success to elevate his own reputation, and tomorrow's presentation would determine whether I could reclaim my professional identity or remain trapped in his shadow forever. The morning of the Global Tech presentation arrived with deceptive sunshine streaming through our office windows. I had arrived 2 hours early to set up my prototype and review the technical demonstrations one final time. My hands trembled slightly as I calibrated the device's sensors, knowing this moment would define my professional future. Brad strode into the conference room 30 minutes before our scheduled meeting, immediately rearranging the furniture and adjusting the presentation equipment. His expensive navy suit and confident demeanor projected the image of a successful technology executive, but I could see the nervous energy beneath his polished exterior. "Remember, let me handle the introduction and business overview," he instructed while straightening his tie. "You can jump in with technical details if they ask specific questions, but keep it simple. These people care about results, not the engineering complexity behind them." Sarah Chen arrived precisely on time, accompanied by 3 members of her technical evaluation team. Her sharp gray suit and no-nonsense demeanor immediately commanded respect from everyone in the room. At 45, she had built a reputation as one of the most astute technology executives in Silicon Valley, with an uncanny ability to identify breakthrough innovations before competitors recognized their potential. "Mr. Morrison, thank you for inviting us to see your smart home automation solution," she said, settling into her chair with practiced efficiency. Global Tech is always interested in partnerships with companies that can demonstrate genuine innovation rather than incremental improvements. Behind Sarah's team, a woman in her 50s quietly entered the room and took a seat in the corner. Brad introduced her briefly as Dr. Helen Morrison, an industry observer. But something about her calm confidence suggested greater significance than her minimal introduction implied. James Fletcher, Brad's college friend and potential investor, also slipped into the back of the room with apologetic gestures about his late arrival. His presence added another layer of pressure, as Brad had been courting his investment for months. Brad launched into his presentation with characteristic enthusiasm, describing the smart home market opportunity and positioning our technology as a revolutionary advancement over existing solutions. His slides showcased impressive market research and competitive analysis, but I noticed he was already struggling when Sarah asked pointed questions about the underlying technical architecture. The artificial intelligence component adapts to user behavior through advanced machine learning algorithms, he explained, clearly reciting phrases from my documentation without truly understanding their implications. The system optimizes energy consumption while maximizing user convenience through predictive automation. Sarah's technical team exchanged glances that suggested they recognized the superficial nature of his explanations. One engineer leaned forward with a specific question about neural network training methodologies, and Brad fumbled through an answer that revealed his limited understanding of the actual technology. Perhaps we could see a live demonstration, Sarah suggested, her tone remaining professional despite obvious concerns about Brad's technical credibility. My prototype sat on the conference table like a sleeping dragon waiting to demonstrate its power. I activated the device with trembling fingers, watching as its sensors began scanning the room and adapting to the environmental conditions. The integration with our conference room systems was flawless, automatically adjusting lighting and temperature based on occupancy and ambient conditions. The system learns individual preferences within hours of installation. I began, finally finding my voice as the technology responded perfectly to my commands. Watch how it recognizes different users and adapts accordingly. The demonstration exceeded even my own expectations. The device seamlessly coordinated with various smart home components, creating scenarios that showcased energy efficiency, security integration, and personalized automation. Sarah's team leaned forward with genuine interest, asking increasingly sophisticated questions about implementation and scalability. For 20 minutes, I felt like the professional I had always aspired to become. My responses were confident and detailed, demonstrating deep understanding of both technical innovation and commercial applications. Sarah nodded approvingly as I explained the competitive advantages and market positioning. Then everything collapsed in an instant of shocking violence. "This presentation has gone on long enough," Brad announced suddenly, his voice carrying an edge of desperation I had never heard before. "The prototype is incomplete and not ready for commercial application. The technical specifications need fundamental revision before we can seriously discuss partnerships." Before I could process his words, he grabbed my precious device from the conference table and raised it above his head. Time seemed suspended as I watched 8 months of work and dreams hanging in the air, completely vulnerable to his inexplicable rage. "This is garbage," he declared, bringing the prototype crashing down against the mahogany surface with devastating force. "We will start over with a real team that understands commercial requirements rather than academic perfectionism." The sound of shattering circuitry filled the room like breaking glass in a cathedral. My life's work lay scattered across the table in fragments of metal and broken dreams. Sarah and her team stared in absolute shock, their professional composure unable to mask their bewilderment at witnessing such destructive leadership. I stood paralyzed, unable to comprehend how the man I had married could destroy something so precious in front of the people whose respect I desperately needed. The silence that followed felt like the end of everything I had worked to achieve. "Doctor." Helen Morrison rose from her corner chair with the deliberate grace of someone accustomed to commanding attention in rooms full of powerful people. Her silver hair caught the fluorescent lighting as she stepped forward, and her calm voice cut through the shocked silence like a surgeon's blade. "Ladies and gentlemen, I believe introductions are in order," she announced, her tone carrying decades of authority earned in the highest levels of the technology industry. "I am Dr. Helen Morrison, Senior Strategic Consultant for Global Tech Industries and advisor to 3 of the largest venture capital firms in Silicon Valley." Brad's face drained of color as he realized the quiet observer he had barely acknowledged was actually one of the most influential voices in tech innovation. His confident posture crumpled like a house of cards in an earthquake, and his hands began trembling as the magnitude of his mistake became clear. In 30 years of consulting on technology acquisitions and partnerships, I have witnessed many examples of poor leadership, Dr. Morrison continued, her gaze fixed on Brad with surgical precision. However, I have never seen a CEO deliberately sabotage genuine innovation in front of potential partners. What I observed here today was not leadership but rather the desperate actions of someone threatened by superior talent. Sarah Chen leaned forward in her chair, her business facade giving way to obvious fascination with this unexpected development. The technical team members exchanged meaningful glances as they began to understand the deeper dynamics at play in the destroyed presentation. Miss Morrison, Sarah said, turning away from Brad to address me directly. I would very much like to have your business card and continue this conversation without interference. My hands shook as I reached into my portfolio and extracted one of my personal cards, the ones I had printed with my direct contact information rather than the company details Brad controlled. The simple act of handing it to Sarah felt like stepping across a threshold into an entirely new life. I recorded the entire demonstration on my phone. Dr. Morrison announced, producing her device and beginning to play back footage of my prototype's flawless performance. As you can see, the technology demonstrated remarkable sophistication and commercial viability before it was unnecessarily destroyed. Brad attempted to regain control of the deteriorating situation, his voice rising to the aggressive tone he used during difficult negotiations. Alicia is emotionally unstable and lacks the business judgment necessary for major partnerships. The prototype had fundamental flaws that only experienced leadership could recognize. Mr. Morrison. Dr. Morrison interrupted, her professional courtesy masking obvious contempt. Your behavior today has been thoroughly documented and will be included in my report to Global Tech's Board of Directors. I will be recommending immediate termination of any consideration for partnership with TechFlow Solutions. James Fletcher quietly gathered his materials and slipped toward the exit, clearly recognizing that his potential investment was evaporating, along with Brad's credibility. His departure sent another wave of panic across Brad's features as he realized even his personal relationships were being damaged by his actions. Jenny and Carlos had apparently been listening from the adjacent conference room, because they suddenly appeared in the doorway with expressions of righteous anger that warmed my heart despite the chaos surrounding us. Their loyalty meant more to me in that moment than all the venture capital in Silicon Valley. We have been documenting Alicia's actual contributions to every company project for the past 6 months, Carlos announced, producing a thick folder of evidence. If anyone questions her technical capabilities or leadership potential, we have comprehensive proof of her innovations. Diana stood frozen near the presentation screen, clearly recognizing that her alignment with Brad had placed her on the wrong side of a catastrophic situation. Her usual confidence had evaporated, replaced by the desperate expression of someone watching their career prospects disappear in real time. Miss Morrison, would you be interested in discussing opportunities at Global Tech? Sarah asked, her voice carrying genuine enthusiasm despite the bizarre circumstances. We are currently seeking a Chief Innovation Officer, and what I witnessed today suggests you possess exactly the technical excellence and integrity we value. Dr. Morrison nodded approvingly at Sarah's offer. Additionally, I am launching a new innovation incubator, specifically designed to support brilliant engineers who have been marginalized by inadequate leadership. Your prototype represents exactly the kind of breakthrough technology we aim to develop and commercialize. The room had completely transformed in the space of 10 minutes. Brad, who had entered as the confident CEO, controlling every aspect of the presentation, now stood isolated and exposed as his professional reputation crumbled around him. Meanwhile, I found myself at the center of multiple opportunities that valued my actual contributions rather than his manufactured narrative. I have extensive contacts in intellectual property law. Dr. Morrison continued, addressing my unspoken concerns about protecting my innovations. Your prototype was developed using your own resources and expertise, which means the intellectual property belongs to you regardless of your employment status. The magnitude of this revelation hit me like lightning. All my fears about losing control of my life's work were unfounded because I had unknowingly protected myself by conducting most of the development outside company facilities. Brad's attempts to claim ownership were legally meaningless. "Miss Morrison," Sarah said, "would you be willing to join Dr. Morrison and myself for a private discussion about your future? I believe we have much to explore regarding mutually beneficial arrangements." As we prepared to leave the conference room, I looked back at Brad standing amid the wreckage of my destroyed prototype. For the first time since our marriage began, I saw him clearly as the insecure, manipulative person he had always been beneath his charismatic exterior. The man I had loved was revealing his true nature under pressure, and what I discovered filled me with determination rather than despair. The private conference room felt like a sanctuary compared to the battlefield we had just escaped. Sarah settled into her chair with the satisfied expression of an executive who had just discovered exactly what she was looking for, while Dr. Morrison maintained her calm professionalism despite the dramatic circumstances. "Please, tell us about your vision for smart home automation," Sarah encouraged, her tone completely different from the formal business persona she had displayed during Brad's failed presentation. "I want to understand your perspective without any interference or interpretation." For the first time in years, I felt permission to speak freely about my technical innovations and commercial aspirations. I explained how my system could revolutionize residential energy management while providing unprecedented convenience and security. The algorithms I had developed could predict user needs with accuracy rates exceeding 90% after just 1 week of operation. The prototype Brad destroyed was actually a simplified version designed for demonstration purposes, I revealed, opening my laptop to show additional features I had developed independently. The full system incorporates advanced machine learning capabilities that could transform how people interact with their living environments. Sarah's eyes widened as I navigated through sophisticated software interfaces and detailed technical specifications that far exceeded anything Brad had presented. The documentation revealed months of additional development work conducted entirely on my own time and resources. "This is extraordinary," she whispered, studying my energy optimization algorithms with obvious fascination. "The commercial applications extend far beyond residential use. Corporate facilities, educational institutions, healthcare systems, even entire smart city infrastructures could benefit from this technology." Dr. Morrison leaned forward to examine my work more closely, her experienced eye immediately recognizing the breakthrough potential of my innovations. "In my assessment, this represents the most significant advancement in building automation I have encountered in the past decade. The intellectual property alone is worth millions of dollars in licensing revenue." I felt tears welling in my eyes as these respected professionals validated work that Brad had dismissed as academic perfectionism. Their genuine enthusiasm reminded me why I had fallen in love with engineering in the first place, before years of diminishment had eroded my confidence. "Miss Morrison, I need to ask directly," Sarah said, her businesswoman persona returning as she shifted into negotiation mode. "What would it take to bring your talents and technology to global tech? We can offer competitive compensation, significant stock options, your own research team, and complete creative control over development priorities." The offer represented everything I had dreamed of achieving throughout my career. Working for global tech would provide resources and recognition that could elevate my innovations to global scale while freeing me from the toxic dynamics that had poisoned my relationship with Brad. Additionally, Dr. Morrison added, "My incubator program could provide an alternative path if you prefer maintaining independence while accessing funding and mentorship. We specialize in supporting innovators who have been undervalued by traditional corporate structures." I realized I was facing a moment of profound decision that would determine the trajectory of my entire future. Both opportunities offered respect, resources, and recognition that I had been denied for years while supporting Brad's ego and ambition. Before I can make any commitments, I need to address the situation with my husband and TechFlow Solutions. I said carefully, recognizing the personal complexities that complicated any professional transition. Our marriage and business relationship have become impossible to separate. Alicia, may I call you that? Dr. Morrison asked gently. I have witnessed many brilliant women sacrifice their potential to support partners who ultimately undermine their success. Your husband's behavior today was not an isolated incident, but rather the culmination of a pattern designed to maintain his superiority at your expense. Her words hit me like a physical blow because they articulated truths I had been avoiding for years. Brad's support had always come with conditions that limited my visibility and independence, ensuring his role remained central while mine remained supporting. I have contacts throughout the industry who can verify your individual contributions to various projects. Dr. Morrison continued, if legal challenges arise regarding intellectual property or non-compete agreements, I can connect you with attorneys who specialize in protecting innovators from exploitation. Sarah nodded in agreement, her expression reflecting both professional interest and personal concern for my situation. Global Tech has extensive legal resources available to protect employees from retaliatory actions by former employers. Your innovations are too valuable to be suppressed by personal conflicts. I felt a surge of empowerment that I had not experienced since my early days at Apple. When my work was recognized and celebrated rather than minimized and appropriated. These women were offering me the opportunity to reclaim my professional identity and achieve my full potential. I need some time to process everything that has happened today and consider my options carefully, I said, my voice growing stronger with each word. But I want you both to know how much your support means to me, especially after years of being told my technical focus was incompatible with business success. Take all the time you need, Sarah assured me. My offer will remain open, and I hope you will consider joining our team when you are ready. Talent like yours deserves to be nurtured rather than suppressed. As we prepared to return to the main conference room, I felt a transformation beginning deep within my core. The frightened, diminished version of myself that had entered this building was being replaced by the confident engineer and leader I had always possessed the potential to become. The main conference room felt like a crime scene when we returned. Brad stood near the windows, attempting to salvage some dignity while speaking in hushed tones with the remaining Global Tech team members, but his body language betrayed the desperation of someone watching his world collapse in real time. Diana had positioned herself near the exit, clearly planning to distance herself from the wreckage of Brad's leadership as quickly as possible. Her usual sharp confidence had been replaced by the nervous energy of someone desperately calculating career survival strategies. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Morrison announced to the room, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to delivering industry-changing decisions. After careful consideration of today's events, I am recommending that Global Tech immediately withdraw from any consideration of partnership with TechFlow Solutions due to serious concerns about leadership ethics and business practices. Brad's face flushed crimson as the full impact of her statement registered. His carefully constructed professional facade finally cracked completely, revealing the insecure and vindictive personality he had hidden beneath years of polished charm. Alicia has been sabotaging this company for months, he declared, his voice rising to an almost hysterical pitch. She lacks the emotional stability necessary for major business decisions and has been sharing confidential information with competitors. I had no choice but to prevent her from damaging our relationship with potential partners. His desperate accusations hung in the air like toxic smoke, poisoning the atmosphere with their obvious falseness. Everyone in the room could see his claims for what they were. The final thrashing of someone drowning in the consequences of his own poor decisions. Mr. Morrison, I said calmly, removing my portfolio and placing it on the conference table where my destroyed prototype had been moments before. I have extensive documentation of my independent development work, including timestamps, version histories, and witness statements that prove my innovations were created using my own resources and time. I opened the portfolio to reveal additional prototypes I had developed in secret, each one representing months of after-hours work conducted entirely outside company facilities. The devices showcased capabilities that far exceeded anything Brad could have imagined, let alone created himself. Sarah and her technical team gathered around the table as I demonstrated features that made the destroyed prototype look primitive by comparison. Advanced artificial intelligence algorithms, seamless integration protocols, and energy optimization systems that push the boundaries of current technology. These innovations represent approximately 18 months of independent development. I explained, connecting one device to my laptop and displaying sophisticated monitoring interfaces. Every algorithm, every hardware design, every software component was created without using any company resources or intellectual property. James Fletcher returned to the room at that moment, apparently having reconsidered his hasty exit. However, instead of offering support to Brad, he approached me with obvious interest in my demonstrated capabilities. Miss Morrison, I withdrew my investment offer to TechFlow Solutions after witnessing the leadership issues, he announced, completely ignoring Brad's shocked expression. However, I would be very interested in discussing funding opportunities for your independent innovations. What you have shown here today represents exactly the kind of breakthrough technology our firm seeks to support. Brad's desperation reached new heights as he realized even his personal relationships were being redirected toward supporting my work rather than his leadership. James, you cannot seriously consider betraying years of friendship based on one bad presentation. Alicia is my wife, and her work belongs to both of us through our marriage. Actually, Mr. Morrison, your wife's innovations belong entirely to her. Dr. Morrison corrected with obvious satisfaction. I have already spoken with intellectual property attorneys who confirmed that work developed independently using personal resources cannot be claimed by employers or spouses without explicit agreements transferring ownership. Jenny and Carlos moved closer to my position, their body language clearly indicating their loyalty had shifted permanently away from Brad's leadership. Their presence reminded me that I was not alone in recognizing the toxic dynamics that had poisoned our work environment. We formally request transfers to work directly under Alessia's supervision at whatever organization she chooses to join, Carlos announced, producing the documentation they had compiled of my actual contributions to company projects. Our records prove conclusively that she has been the primary innovator behind every significant technical advancement achieved by this company. Diana finally approached me with an expression of carefully calculated contrition that fooled no one in the room. Alicia, I hope you can forgive my lack of support during these difficult months. I allowed business considerations to override my personal judgment about your exceptional capabilities. Her apology felt hollow and self-serving, motivated by recognition that my star was rising while Brad's was crashing, rather than genuine remorse for her betrayal. However, I accepted it gracefully because maintaining professional relationships serves long-term career interests better than nursing grudges. Sarah, I want to formally accept your offer to join Global Tech as Chief Innovation Officer, I announced, my voice carrying new confidence that surprised even myself. My technology will be developed properly with appropriate resources and recognition. The room erupted in congratulations from everyone except Brad, who stood frozen near the windows as he watched his company, his reputation, and his marriage dissolving simultaneously. His attempts to diminish my achievements had backfired spectacularly, elevating my profile while destroying his own credibility. Dr. Morrison, I would also like to explore opportunities with your incubator program for developing additional innovations independently. I continued, recognizing the value of maintaining multiple pathways for my future success. The combination of corporate resources and entrepreneurial freedom could accelerate development beyond anything possible in traditional business structures. As handshakes and business cards were exchanged around me, I felt the exhilarating sensation of watching my true potential finally being recognized and celebrated. The woman who had entered this conference room as Brad's diminished appendage was leaving as an independent force capable of shaping the future of technology. 6 months later, I sat in my corner office at Global Tech's Innovation Campus, watching the sunrise paint Seattle's skyline in shades of gold and amber. My smart home automation system had exceeded every performance metric, revolutionizing not just residential applications but corporate facilities, educational institutions, and even city infrastructure management. The technology that Brad had dismissed as garbage was now featured on the covers of 3 major industry magazines, with my photograph prominently displayed as the visionary engineer behind the breakthrough. Sales projections indicated my innovations would generate over $50 million in revenue within the first year alone. Jenny and Carlos occupied the workstations adjacent to my office, leading teams of brilliant engineers who understood that innovation thrives in environments where creativity is celebrated rather than suppressed. Our collaborative dynamic had attracted top talent from across the industry, creating a research division that consistently exceeded ambitious development targets. Dr. Morrison's incubator program had provided additional funding for 3 separate projects I was developing independently, including advances in renewable energy integration that could transform how buildings interact with electrical grids. The combination of corporate resources and entrepreneurial freedom had accelerated my productivity beyond anything I had imagined possible. My divorce from Brad had been finalized 2 months earlier, with intellectual property attorneys ensuring that my innovations remained entirely under my control. The legal proceedings revealed the extent of his financial mismanagement at TechFlow Solutions, which had declared bankruptcy shortly after losing the Global Tech partnership opportunity. Diana had attempted to secure a position at Global Tech through my recommendation, but I had declined to support her application. Trust, once broken through deliberate betrayal, requires years of consistent behavior to rebuild, and career opportunities should be earned through merit rather than granted through forgiveness. Brad's reputation in the tech industry had been permanently damaged by Dr. Morrison's detailed report about his leadership failures and ethical violations. Several other companies had come forward with similar stories about his pattern of appropriating others' work and sabotaging talented team members who threatened his ego. James Fletcher had become one of my strongest advocates, not only providing venture capital funding but also introducing me to other investors interested in supporting women-led technology companies. His network had proven invaluable for expanding my influence beyond traditional corporate boundaries. The personal transformation had been even more profound than the professional success. I had rediscovered the confidence and ambition that years of systematic diminishment had nearly destroyed. Every morning brought new challenges that excited rather than intimidated me, because I finally worked with people who valued my contributions rather than minimizing them. Sarah had become both a mentor and friend, teaching me how to navigate executive responsibilities while maintaining the technical focus that drove my innovations. Under her guidance, I was developing leadership skills that could eventually lead to my own company or even higher positions within Global Tech's corporate hierarchy. My new apartment overlooked Puget Sound, its smart home features powered by my own technology integrated seamlessly throughout every room. The irony was not lost on me that I was living inside the future I had created, surrounded by devices that anticipated my needs and optimized my daily routines with artificial intelligence algorithms I had written myself. The most satisfying development had been receiving messages from other women in technology who felt inspired by my story of overcoming professional sabotage and personal betrayal. My visibility had created opportunities to mentor young engineers facing similar challenges, helping them recognize their worth before toxic relationships damaged their potential. Yesterday, I had received an email from Brad attempting to reconcile both personally and professionally. He claimed to have learned from his mistakes and wanted to explore opportunities for collaboration on future projects. I deleted the message without responding, understanding that some bridges should remain permanently burned to prevent repeating destructive patterns. Dr. Morrison had invited me to speak at next month's Women in Technology conference about overcoming systemic barriers to innovation. My presentation would focus on recognizing signs of professional exploitation and developing strategies for protecting intellectual property while building supportive networks. As I prepared for another day of pushing technological boundaries, I reflected on the profound life lesson embedded in my journey. Sometimes the people closest to us become the greatest obstacles to our growth, and liberation requires the courage to walk away from comfortable situations that no longer serve our potential. True partnership, whether professional or personal, must be built on mutual respect and recognition of each person's individual contributions. When someone consistently diminishes your achievements to elevate their own status, they are revealing fundamental character flaws that cannot be fixed through patience or loyalty. My prototype had been destroyed that day 6 months ago, but something far more valuable had been born from the wreckage. I had discovered my own strength, my own worth, and my own ability to create a future where my talents could flourish without limitation or apology. The morning sun was fully risen now, illuminating my office and the exciting projects scattered across my desk. I had important work to do, innovations to develop, and boundaries to push in ways that would benefit millions of people around the world. Success, I had learned, is not just about creating breakthrough technology. It is about surrounding yourself with people who celebrate your achievements rather than diminishing them, and having the wisdom to recognize when it is time to leave situations that no longer serve your growth. Have you ever found yourself in a relationship or workplace where your contributions were consistently minimized or appropriated by someone else? How did you find the strength to stand up for your worth and demand the respect you deserved? I would love to hear your stories of overcoming professional or personal challenges in the comments below. Thank you for joining me on this journey of discovery and transformation. Please like this video if my story resonated with you. Subscribe to hear more about my ongoing innovations and adventures, and share this with anyone who might need encouragement to pursue their own dreams despite the obstacles others place in their path. Remember that your talents and achievements belong to you, and no one has the right to diminish your potential to satisfy their own insecurities. Trust yourself, protect your work, and surround yourself with people who want to see you succeed rather than fail. Until next time, keep innovating, and never let anyone convince you that your dreams are too big or your abilities too small to change the world.